I have a Throwback Thursday for you, one of my favorite little projects, a wooden turkey, just in time for Thanksgiving. Today we're crafting a unique Thanksgiving turkey. By using a combination of exotic and domestic hardwoods, we have started by doing a little bit of a layout. I used my compass to give me a half circle. This is going to be our feather fan. What I did is I marked my line up here. I did a secondary line here where I wanted the round top of my feather to be. And then I made a third line here. That's the same size as this. There'll be 2 rows. You saw the 2 rows of feathers. The second row of feathers is down here. There's 5 on each side. And then there'll be an extra one down here that creates the stand for the turkey as it stands up. Because these are going to be very small pieces, I made a jig to hold onto them better so that I can not get my hands close to the saw. This is 6 inches long. I measured 1 inch in from each side and drew a diagonal line. And then I made a cut line. That's my cut line. And I used my toggle clamp. Now, I made a video on this jig and how it works and how these toggle clamps work. I'm going to give you a reference to that, a link to that, so you can see how that works. We set our saw at the width of my jig base, 9 inches. I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to make sure that I have my saw set correctly, and I do. By holding on to my toggle clamps, I can run my piece through the saw without getting my hands close to the blade at all, and my piece of wood is held on really good and tight by the clamp. Let's just cut one piece and I'll show you. I'm getting ready to show you how I did the tops of my feathers, the round top on my feathers. What I did is I made a little sample, so a little template. And I made a jig, and I nailed it to my little piece of stationery here to hold my pieces. And then I put my template over the top of it, and I just push them both down tight. I take a good sharp pencil so that I have a very sharp line. And I just trace around my top. And I do it both sides, and I'll show you the reason I do it both sides in just a second. Because once we get this all drawn on here, then we've got to sand it to fit, or sand it nice and round. So there's our feather with the round top drawn on both sides. This little configuration on the other side, these are the short feathers, and it's the same thing. Holds in the template, or holds in the feather. Here's the template. Bring it out, turn it around, both sides. Make sure you have a good sharp pencil. And there we are with our small feather. Ready to go. All right, let me show you how we round that top. Now I have my horizontal belt sander. I understand that this is a piece of equipment that is a little more advanced than somebody who has just a small shop. But if you have any kind of a belt sander or a spindle sander or anything like that, you can sand that edge. You can take a jigsaw and cut and file, or just block sand if you don't have the equipment. Being as I have a wide belt or a edge sander, we're going to use the edge sander. So let's get going and I'll show you how. And the reason I did both sides is so that I can stand here at this side and do 1/2, and stand here and do the other half, and I can hold on to my piece of wood beyond the table really good so that I don't have to try to do it this way. I can hang on to my piece of wood really good, and that's a little safer when you're sanding. Let's sand one piece and show you. You can see how I've sanded down to my line. I'll flip over and sand down to the line on the other side, and there's the round top to my feathers, and they end up looking like that on the top. This is a piece of Osage orange. This is a piece of purple heart. We're going to talk about the kinds of wood that I used in a minute, but you can see how you end up with a round top on each piece. We're getting ready to glue our back row of feathers together. We're going to be using CA glue and an activator. CA glue, they tell me on the instructions it stands for cyanoacrylate, C-Y-A-N, anyway, CA glue. I was not able to find CA glue at any of the hardware or big box stores in our locale, and so I was able to get online. Of course, Amazon has it. All right, let's start off and work our way in. We'll start with our first two pieces. I put a little block here to keep our pieces lined up as we put them together. And I'll just show you how this goes. We'll put a few pieces together and then I'll finish it off. You take your CA glue and you run a little bead of CA glue down your board, and you put the two pieces together and hold it for a second, and then you take your little spray activator and you spray a little activator on there, and that hurries and dries the glue instant. And so I've used CA glue before, but not on any of my videos. I've used it in shops where I've worked, and it's amazing stuff. And this is a way to put this little fan of different colored woods together in a very quick hurry. And you don't want to use regular wood glue because regular wood glue is too thick. You want this to be close together. So this CA glue is the perfect glue for putting this together. And like I say, little bead of glue, press it together like that, hold it for just a second, a little squirt of activator, and it's done. And I'll go ahead and get the rest of the fan all glued together. We'll come back and take a look. All right, here is our back row of feathers all glued up, ready to go. Both sides ready to sand. We'll sand these flush. The next row of feathers, the smaller row, fits right in here about this, and it's put together the same way, just by gluing up just like we've done before. They're just smaller pieces. I'll go ahead and get a row of that put together, and then we'll go ahead and I'll show you how these two fit one on top of the other to make the back part of our turkey. All of our feathers will look really nice. I have the feathers all glued together now. I would like to apologize. I went back and looked at the video and I had my hands in the way the whole time. Just so that you know, I put CA glue down each seam, put it together, sprayed a little activator on it, and glued the fans together like this. Here's the small fan. I wanted to talk about the kinds of wood that we used, and so I sprayed a little sealer coat on the back side to make the colors show up better. We have alder. This is purple heart, white oak, wingy or wingay, depending upon how you pronounce it. This is padauk, American hard maple, American walnut, Osage orange, red oak, zebra wood, cherry, and then this is the dark heart of a piece of soft maple. So we have hard maple and soft maple, both American trees, just different kinds of the same species of maple. But that makes us a nice feather fan of all these different kinds of wood. And we've used the same kinds of wood to make our small fan that goes in front. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I made the small ones also. As you remember, these are 6 inches. They go from a point to 1 7/8 at the full 6-inch mark, and then I rounded the top. Our small feathers, I actually cut them the exact same size. So I actually cut a whole bunch more of this 6-inch long, 1 7/8 at the top, and then I cut them off at 4 1/4. So it's the same angles, same size wood, everything. I just cut the tops of them off at 4 1/4 in order to create smaller feathers. So I didn't have to reset my jig. I didn't have to do anything like that. I used the exact same jig. I made just more pieces, and then I just cut them off so that they were shorter. So I want to show you how this goes together. There are 12 pieces in our big fan. There's 11 pieces in our small fan. I call it a fan, but these are the feathers, just so you know that these are the feathers. I just call it a fan because it's laid out in a fan. What I am doing, because there's 11 and 12, I lined up the center of each one of the small feathers to the seam on the large feathers. So let me just lay this on here, right here, and line up those seams, and then I'll hold it and show you what I'm talking about. So this feather is lined up on the seam. This feather is lined up on the seam, and it's the same all the way around. Each of the small feathers is lined up on the seam of the large feathers behind it. And that creates our fan right there of both levels of feathers. And it gives of course I made sure that I didn't have the same colors lining up with one another so that it really gave it a nice colorful display on our feathers. Okay, the next thing we need to do now, I have sanded these 80 grit, then 120, and all they need to do is just have a 150 grit sand put on them. Let me show you how we have 150 grit set up in our sander, and we just and because it's already sanded, all we're really doing is polishing it, getting ready for the finish that's going to go on it. I'll do the same for both sides of this, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how we're going to glue these together, again using our CA glue. And then we'll end up with our fan like that. And then we'll go from there. I'll show you what's next. Okay, we're getting ready to glue our small fan on our large one. I have marked just a couple of small marks here where I will line up the front feathers to the back feathers so I know where they are, and I've made sure that this is exactly where I want it. I'm going to take my CA glue and I'm just going to make a nice, I'm going to get my hands in the way here again. But you can see I've put plenty of CA glue on here. And then I'm going to lay these feathers on here, and I'm going to line up the marks that I had put on there. Okay. Like that and that. I'm just going to push on this for just a second and get it to set a little bit. I'm not going to use any accelerator on this glue up with my CA glue because I'm going to put a finish coat on this with just a sealer coat of shellac. I don't know if the accelerator will cause that shellac to have a different color or block some of the sealer on it. So I'm not going to use any of it because there's no way to sand it down in here if I were to spray the accelerator in there. So now I'm just going to leave that right there for just a few minutes, and then we're going to get ready to glue on the next piece. And I'm going to show you what that next piece is. Our next piece that we're going to put on is the body of the turkey. This is the body of the turkey. I want to show you how I made that. While we're waiting for that glue to dry, what I did, I determined the size that I wanted. I determined that I wanted around a circle with a flat bottom, and I wanted to know how, trying to figure out how I would cut that. I decided the best way to cut that was with a hole saw. So I have my big hole saw here, But because I wanted a flat bottom on it, what I did is I measured up from the flat. I cut a straight line on my board. I measured up so that I was off center where my drill bit, where my centering drill bit was, and then I just cut. And that's what gave me a circle with a flat bottom. And this will become the body of our turkey, and I'll show you how that goes on in just a second. I sanded the edges of it all the way around just by hand so that it's all nice and sanded and ready to go. And we'll finish sand it a little bit when we get it all put on there, but I'll show you how that goes in a minute. And the reason I haven't put it on before now, it becomes part of the leg that actually holds the turkey standing up. In order to make that line up correctly, I made myself a little stop block. This is just a piece of 2x material. These are going to be the feet. So when the turkey stands up like this stands up, and the little body of our turkey becomes the third leg. So we have 1, 2, and 3 points that will touch, and that will make our turkey stand up correctly and be stable when it sits on a table or a bookshelf or however you want to display it. In order to make that all line up correctly, I'm using my little 2x stop block. And what I'm going to do is the same thing that I did when I put on my second round of feathers. I'm going to make myself a couple of little marks here so that I know where to put my CA glue. And you can see I have little marks right here. And so my CA glue has got to go in here. So let's put some CA glue in here, like this. Okay, that's plenty. We'll take our little round that is going to be the body of our turkey, and we'll line it up with the marks that we made. And we'll let that sit there for just a second while it sets for just a little bit. And then I am going to take some accelerator, and I'm going to squirt some accelerator from the back side underneath to help get this to set really good. It won't make any difference because there won't be any finish on the back side underneath that I need to worry about. So I'm going to turn it over. We're going to take our accelerator. We're going to give it some squirts underneath. There we are. Now, there's our turkey standing up. Isn't that awesome looking? Now, one thing our turkey doesn't have is a head. I'm going to show you that in a second. I'm going to take my sander and just sand this off so it's nice and even. This hole will be covered, so don't worry about the hole. That's not going to show. All right. Give me just a second to sand this, then I'll come back and show you how I built the head to my turkey, because right now our turkey is headless. We don't want a headless turkey. Okay, our turkey is ready for the head. I put a little mark right here. That's where I want the bottom of my turkey neck to go. But let me show you what our turkey head looks like. First off, let's show you the material that we're using. This is a piece of South American rosewood. That's what we're going to use for our turkey head. It's very heavy, very dense, and it's really pretty. This is what our turkey head looks like. This will go against the body of our turkey. This is the back side of his head, top of his head, little eyeball. This is the little turkey waddle. I cut this out on my benchtop bandsaw and then just hand sanded it. I also took it after I got it all cut out, because it's a square block. I took it and I turned it a little bit on my bandsaw, and I kind of, you can see if you look at the end, I cut these parts off with the bandsaw and then sanded these with a block sander so that it had a little bit of a taper to the front of my turkey head. And I just sanded this all in. This rosewood is such a nice wood. In fact, you can see, before I did that, I traced, I don't know if you can see it or not in the light, I traced another one on there so that I could make another turkey head if I wanted to. You can see the pencil line right there. So I'm ready for my next turkey head when I get ready. Okay. Same thing, we're going to use a little CA glue. Like I say, our turkey head is going to fit in the center, lined up with the bottom of that mark that I put on there, and lined up with our center feather of our small row of feathers. So this is the center, and we want our turkey head to be lined up with the center, and we want it to be stop on that little mark right there. And so our turkey head is going to be just like that. So let's put a little CA glue down the middle of our body like that. Okay. And you just look at those colors. Now I'm going to give it a sealer coat of shellac. We're going to see you next time on Woodworking with Wes.